Yeah, so I saw Robbie in concert when I was 9 years old with my mum and dad at Milton Keynes Bowl, which was kind of like our local venue. So he was the pop star, the rock star of the UK when I was growing up. So when I was asked, eventually, do you want to play him? It was kind of a no-brainer for me. Also, I kind of wanted to be a pop star when I was younger, and I had a very failed X Factor audition when I was about 14 or 15, which I think is like American Idol. And I was like, right, okay, that's my pop star dreams all ruined. So then when someone says you get to perform in front of arenas and you kind of get to live that life almost, it was just the icing on the cake to what this project was going to be. And I think Robbie's just a very interesting person to be able to capture. He's so dynamic, he's so individual in his humor, in how he represents himself, in his honesty. I don't think there's a performer out there that engages with their audience like he does. You see it at every concert he does. He really cares about the people that follow him, that listen to him. So I think it's a really interesting person to get to dive into. Yeah, weather amazing. Like, I grew up on Lord of the Rings, Avatar, Planet of the Apes, like the huge blockbuster titles where they really were the front runners of that technology. So to be able to kind of be the person that was taking, that was joining their journey on taking it to a whole new level. I think we have something ridiculous like 3,000 shots in our movie where the monkey's there. So the work that they had to put in and the faith that they had in me to be able to give them a performance that they could then translate to a monkey was really flattering. But again, because I knew of their previous work, there was never any doubt. Like, you knew that you were in good hands, which meant I didn't really have to worry about how it translated. It just meant that I got to focus on the performance and the human side of Rob, and then let them do their marvelous work afterwards. Well, there's a plethora of interviews of Rob. That's the kind of, he has the fortune and misfortune of having so much of his life documented from the startling age of 15 all the way to the present day. And so it was just finding moments within those interviews where I could say, oh, that's a perfect representation of how I see Rob in this part of the movie. And that's a perfect one where I can see him here. But of course, that's the screen version of Rob. That's the showman version of Rob that the mass people see. So I then had to make sure that we had just the human, just the guy that was born in Stoke-on-Trent to low class, low income, and making sure that we had the dynamic of him and his mum, him and his dad, him and his nan. And I think that's the part of him that the audience will connect to, and that's where they'll see themselves in him. So yeah, so it's finding a balance of just the regular everyday man that goes into a very unregular life, and then also what the physical energy that he exudes when he's around people, and making sure that I was able to capture his ability to light up a room. There's something for everyone. There's the fans of Robbie that are already established that get to see music in a whole new way. You have the people that don't know of Rob or have heard of Rob, don't necessarily know his music, and they get to be immersed in this whole new discography and have these poignant moments that music attaches itself to as well. But then also just how I hope people will be affected by his relationships with the loved ones around him, and how important that is, no matter if you're a global superstar or not, how they are the fabric of how you are as a person and how important they are for your mental health. Despite what you're going through, I think there's such comfort in security, and I think sometimes safety and security within your own life is maybe seen as a bit boring, but I think it's so vital as to how we see ourselves. If we have a good relationship with the people around us, we have a better relationship with ourselves. Working with Michael, he's, I'll say this a lot, I think, through the next, forever, but he's just a genius. He really is an artist, but at the same time, just a really great friend. He has such a beautiful ethos that he creates on his sets that trickles down through every member of cast and every member of crew. He has such passion and such clear vision that it's impossible not to get intoxicated by it. You know, he sells the dream, but unlike others, you then actually get to live that dream, I think. And we had a really fun collaborative process on it. There'd be times where we felt that scenes just weren't working for whatever reason. And he'd say, I want you to play, just go play. And sometimes when directors say that, they just mean they want to change the way that you maybe say one word or one line. But he is like, change the blocking, like just follow your instincts. And that's really refreshing as an actor to mean that you have such a creative control, almost an editorial control on it as well, because you really get to have a say in the narrative and how a scene plays out. So then when we created that shorthand earlier on, it meant that we just had this rhythm, and it was a blessing to be a part of.
I was introduced to Michael at his lawyer's house. His lawyer was my wife's childhood friend. His lawyer is the father of my wife's childhood friend. And that's how I was first introduced to Michael, who I was very beguiled and taken with when I first met him, because he is able to tell a story that's so enthralling and gripping the moment that you meet him. Do you know what? I'm excited for audiences to know that this is an incredible film that they need to tell their friends about and come back for a second viewing. That's what I'm excited about. That we have something, you know, when it comes to doing your bit, our bit is done. This film is something, it's a thing. And a lot of films aren't. And we've done our bit. What it's like to watch this film with audiences, well, especially TIFF, because like Telluride's a wonderful festival. I enjoyed myself there. It was like definitely the acceptable face of the film industry. So I've never experienced that. I've only experienced award season in Hollywood, and that's just a bun fight. So to go to some place that's like plaid shirt and cargo pants and cerebral was a wonderful experience. And to get to show off for North America felt fancy. So that was really cool. And it was received really well. Standing ovation, wow. And then TIFF was different because it felt like it wasn't as cerebral. It felt like there was just a warmth and an overwhelming sense of acceptance and compassion and empathy and love. And it wasn't until that particular standing ovation that it just, you know, it dented me in the most fabulous way possible. I was like, oh God, I'm going to start crying, and I don't know if these tears are going to end. But it was, you know, I hate saying this because, you know, this word has been, I suppose, abused. But for me, it's been healing. I've been ready to share my story with audience on the small screen, the middle screen, in a pamphlet, on the internet. You know, I'm available. I spoke to Michael for 12 hours about my life over maybe more over, you know, sessions. And then the collaboration went like this. You get on with it, Michael, and I'll stay out of the way. It's not until you see the film in its entirety that you understand what is needed, because I'd sent some ideas that I'd had for songs to Michael over the 18 months that the film was being made, and he just kept knocking them back. And I'm brittle. I got offended. It's like I've just sent him gold, and he's just knocked it back. And I thought he was wrong until I saw the film. Then I totally get it. And I totally got it. And it was then that I sat down with Freddie Wexler, who's my new mate, that's incredibly talented and a wonderful person. And he'd seen the movie too. And Forbidden Road became the song at the end of the film.
Well, I've got the lovely Kate Mulvaney, who plays Robbie's mum in the film, to thank, because she was the one who suggested me to Michael way back when. And then we sat down over Zoom, kind of, Michael sold me the story. I come from the UK, I know Robbie Williams, so I saw him when I was 9 years old in concert. I was kind of hooked there and then. You told me about the monkey, you showed me some of the previs.
Yep.
Feel and My Way.
Yep.
I was just blown away by it. It's nothing like I'd ever seen before. So we then just had a really vigorous 4 days on Zoom, I think, with Simon Gleason as well, just kind of workshopping scenes. There is one thing though, I remember Michael said, I think it was the second last day of auditions, he said, can you just send over a video of you dancing? Like whatever you want, Robbie or anything else. And like, just to see how you move. I was like, yeah, cool. So there I am, kind of choreographing my own rock DJ music video back home. I send it, I'm really happy with it. Send it directly to the email that Michael had given me. And like a few hours go by, nothing. Next morning comes along, nothing. And then we have our last Zoom session. He's like, oh, did you get a chance to dance? I was like, yeah, I sent it over. He was like, no, I didn't see anything. What email did you send it to? And I sent it to an email that was one letter wrong, but it never got a bounce back. So there's someone out there that's got me rock DJing, body rippling all over the place. So yeah, God knows when that comes out.
Someone will post that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. Like, I think the complexities that you see in Rob is true for everyone. And that's what's beautiful, is that he allowed us to show that and to explore that on screen, which is not that common. Usually you would get the watered down version of someone's life story, and to be able to tell the more honest version of that was, it was a real privilege. But I mean, we obviously watched a ton of Rob, and Johno studied a ton of how Rob moves and behaves as a performer. But then, of course, we've got Ashley Wallen, Jenny Griffin, his assistant. The two of them, all credit goes to them. We've worked together for like 20 years. We did Sherman together, and I think the work that they've done on this film is the best work they've ever done. And it's amazing to say that, because we've worked together for such a long time. They just keep getting better and better. And on this, I think they just went to another level. The choreography of both what's in front of the camera and the camera itself is incredibly choreographed. I feel
which sometimes
Ash is on that camera, moving the camera. So Ash is credited for choreography and for camera operating, which is just because what we found on Showman is that, because we want such specific movements in the camera, and on this beat you have to be here, and on this beat you have to be down there. It's very hard to give counts to a camera operator unless they've got a background in dance. And so Ashley, who's built like a gridiron player, has no problem gearing up and holding the camera and having a beautiful flow to the camera movement. So yeah, on many of the musical numbers, it's actually Ashley on the camera.
It was beautiful, wasn't it? It was. We couldn't have asked for a nicer reception.
Yeah, the TIFF audience was spectacular. And there was two things that were incredible. One, the actual energy in the Roy Thompson Theatre was just amazing. But then it was also really special because it's the first time that Rob, myself, and Johno have sat down and watched the film together. And there were moments that would play out, and I would just see Rob reach over and put his hand on Jono's knee, and it's very, very touching to watch someone who's being portrayed, on film, sitting next to the person who portrayed him, and for me that was a really, really remarkable moment.
And I can't believe what it must be like for Rob to see that, to have
such an incredible performance.
Oh God, so lucky. Could you imagine having your life documented and put in that way, elevated with music? Fair play to him.
Yeah.
I'm excited for the people that weren't Robbie Williams fans to come to see this film and to have this new plethora of music that are not only like absolute bangers after bangers, but again, they're going to have this beautiful story that's attached to that music. So when they hear rock DJ, when they hear something beautiful, it's going to take them to a place that we've hopefully created something like a really unique moment for them, and it provides a new relationship for people to have with Robbie's music.
Yeah, and I think in terms of takeaway, I think there's the music takeaway, and then there is just the things that people can see in themselves, you know. And I think that's a really unique experience. I think what I learned on Showman is that people, it's not necessarily what you think people are going to take, and I think that's what's beautiful about film. You put these narratives up there, and particularly something like Robbie's story that has so many, you know, emotional highs and lows. The lessons learnt, or the way in which people see themselves in that story, it's a very personal thing and a very unique thing. So I always love hearing what people actually walk away with, you know. Kate Mulvaney, bless her, because in Australia, Kate Mulvaney is this, you know, she and you can tell in the film because she plays Rob's mum, and she's not in the film for a lot of screen time, and yet she has so much impact. And we needed someone of her caliber to be able to pull off that performance. And so we were so fortunate to have Kate work on this. It was like such a win for me. I've grown up watching her on stage, just being blown away by the power that she inhabits, you know. And when she mentioned Johno, obviously because of who she is, we were like, oh yeah, like this, Kate thinks this guy's good. And she'd just worked with him over in New York.
Yeah, on Hunters.
And so we were very excited when we saw Johno's work. We were also, the reason we did the rigorous Zoom thing is it's very, very difficult making these decisions remotely. You know, you really want to get in the room. And bless Johno, he really committed to the work over Zoom. You know, and Simon Gleason, who wrote with Oliver Cole, he sort of, Simon's an amazing actor, and so he gets incredibly involved with the actors, and so it was great as well for Johno to sort of have that first connection with Simon, even before he'd been cast. You know, we were sort of really establishing the dynamic of how we all work together, and you know, I've known Simon since school days. Like literally, when we were 15, we used to talk about like making movies together. So this is like a dream come true on so many levels, and I just think that, you know, we were so taken with what Johno could do via Zoom, but we couldn't give him the role. So we said, come over here, but just pack a bag as if you're going to stay. That was kind of the advice, right?
Yeah, it was like, you'll know in 24 hours. So I might be there for 3 days or 3 months. So I was packing, was like, I'm not packing more than 5 pairs of pants, because if I don't get this thing and I've got to repack everything, I'm going to be so depressed.
So yeah, so Johno came over, and you know, it was instant. And then I kept having to ask the producers, like, can I tell him he's doing it? Like, he's doing it, so can we just tell him, you know? And I remember when I told you in my office, I vividly remember the day that I was given the go-ahead that I could officially tell Johno that he was going to play Robbie. It was. I think for Johno it was a real moment, but for Simon and myself, who'd done all this work with him, we were so excited, because what we'd seen over those Zoom calls, we knew if we got to do that over the course of the film, we were going to have something really special.
I think what was key for us straight away was making sure that we had more than one version of Rob. There's such a huge amount of information out there about Robbie Williams, the global superstar, bad boy, you know, cheeky monkey. And I think everyone, well, a lot of fans, a lot of public just think that's the one and only version that there is of Rob. But it was down to us to make sure that we showed his vulnerable side, the side of him that's his own worst enemy. There's something, we have a line in the film where he says, it doesn't matter what you say, because what I say about myself is so much worse. So making sure we had that darkness. I worked with a director a few years ago called Alexandra Spencer-Jones, and she talked about the dark passenger that we all have inside of us. And it's kind of like your unfiltered, unedited version of yourself. And Robbie's is so close to the surface that it can just break through at any second. And you talked about it, how when you're around Robbie, you never know which direction things are going to go. He's so unpredictable. And that's what we wanted to capture on screen as well, that when you're watching him, you're just on the edge of your seat because you're like, what the hell is this going to go? What's he going to do next? So having that danger, having that raw honesty, I think is what we wanted to make sure was captured.
I initially just wanted to capture his story. You know, when you meet someone socially, they ask you questions about your life, you ask them questions about their life, and in hearing his answers when talking about his life, the two things that struck me was that I was like, oh, that's an amazing story. But also I loved the way in which he told it. You know, he's a real storyteller and he loves telling stories. So I just thought it'd be great to capture that. And because he's got a recording studio at his house, it was very easy for me to just say, when I'm in LA, he's always at home. So I just said, when I'm in LA, I'll swing past your house and we'll just go into the recording studio and just chat. Because you should really capture these stories while you still remember all the details. And at the time, it wasn't for any purpose other than to get a recording of it. I literally said to him, it might be for you to just listen to in a nursing home one day, which I think he enjoyed the idea of himself listening to himself in a nursing home one day, which is probably the reason he agreed to do it. But that is literally the pitch. And then over the course of a year and a half, every time I was in LA, we would just get together and do these recordings. And as the recordings went on, the more that I heard, the more that I got excited that maybe there was a way of structuring this into a narrative film. In putting those recordings together, it then begged the question, is the best way to portray Rob? And from the recordings, he would often talk about being a performing monkey. And because he was the one telling the story and because we were seeing it through his eyes, I just thought it would be a very unique way of telling the story to portray him as he sees himself, not as we see him. And so that's where the idea of the monkey came from. And I also think that for some strange reason, you feel more for the monkey than you would if it was just someone playing Rob. It allows you, in the same way that a musical allows you a sort of theatrical license. You know, people who walk down the street don't just burst into song, but they do in musicals. So you're already in a realm of heightened reality, which I love. I love heightened reality as a canvas to work on. And so I think that when you have this heightened reality through the genre of a musical, to then on top of it add a monkey, becomes even more heightened, and it does things. It really does. It somehow allows you to see yourself in Rob more than if it was a human playing it. None of this would be possible if it wasn't for Rob being so open and being so raw. And I don't want to make out that it was just for this project. I think if you watch any of Rob's interviews, he will say the things that other people won't. You know, he will be self-deprecating. He will tell a story that is embarrassing or even paints him not in the most favorable light, and yet he will still tell the story. And I think what's exciting about this film is you have this personality who is open to showing himself warts and all. And that's not always the case. You know, quite often in the musical biopic genre, the most disappointing aspect of those films is how watered down they are. And so you don't really feel like you're getting the truth. Whereas I think the amazing collaboration that we had with Rob was that he allowed us access to his raw and unfiltered life. And I think that's a very rarefied space to be in, or allowed to tell the story in such a honest way. I mean, the musical sequences are a lot of the lessons learned from The Greatest Showman. Obviously, Ashley Wallen and Jenny Griffin, his assistant, who did all the choreography. The work they did on Showman was outstanding. I think the work they did on Better Man is even better. They constantly creatively blow me away. And it isn't just the choreography of what's in front of the camera, but it is the choreography of the camera itself, which is, people like Bob Fosse, there's no one better when it comes to staging musical numbers. And, Ashley actually, in so many of those musical numbers, is the actual camera operator. So he's credited for choreography and camera operating. And that's because we learn on Showman that when you're talking to a camera operator about you have to be here on this beat and you have to be here on that beat, and we have to sweep through this moment as the music swells, unless they're a dancer, giving them counts can be very difficult. And the precision in which we work out these musical numbers, and it's all done through sketching. So we shoot them out on our iPhones, we cut them together, we watch them, we evaluate it, and we do it again. Some musical numbers, something like She's the One, which has got very specific transitional moments that all happen musically. There are so many versions that we shot and edited. Patrick Carell edits all of these musical rehearsals together. He's a producer on the film, but he also sits on set and edits on set as we create these numbers and double checks what we did in rehearsal against what we're doing on set, because the specificity of the moments musically, it just means that things have to lock, and if they don't lock, they'll never work in the edit. And we want to be able to know that before we've moved on. We don't want to get into an edit suite months afterwards and go, oh, didn't work as well as the rehearsal. We want to double check that right there and then. So we don't move on from any shot unless Patrick's given us the all clear. And it's a wonderful way to work because we all get to do this thing away from the lights and the crews and everything, where we're just doing it in a rehearsal space with a laptop, and a phone, and we're just sketching out the idea. And once that idea works and makes you feel something and gives you goosebumps, you go, once all of the costume, production design, cinematography, all these elements get added on top, once all of those talented people come to bear on the image, it's going to work. And you have a great confidence moving forward that all these people you rally around you to create these spectacles, you feel very clear that it's in service of something that will give you the feeling that you're striving for. Weta set up in Melbourne, Australia to do this production, and they're originally from New Zealand. They've done obviously some of the greatest digital performance characters that have ever happened, from Avatar to Lord of the Rings to Planet of the Apes. It was after the third Planet of the Apes where I was just blown away by the performances of Andy Serkis and Mark Rylance, and these are incredible actors. And so much of that film was so moving based on the unspoken word, just done with looks. And I just thought, wow, if they're at a level now where they're capturing this really subtle performances, but incredibly moving and incredibly powerful, I felt very confident that they would be able to apply all of that knowledge to Robbie's character and then add singing and dancing on top of it. And so that was sort of the evolution of what they'd done in the past and where they took it. And I think what they've done in this film is the greatest work that has ever come out of Weta. I come from a background of visual effects and animation, and it blows my mind. And that is a credit to Luke Miller, the visual effects supervisor, and how bold he was in terms of following us into this narrative. And Andy Taylor, the visual effects producer from Weta, the two of them, they just rallied behind this project in a way. They brought an incredible team of artists who were wildly passionate about this film together, and the work they did not only was a constant source of inspiration for me, and it, you know, in moments of exhaustion, of creative fatigue, we would get these deliveries on a Friday, and I would just smile from ear to ear. Every Friday was like Christmas morning. Like when I got the delivery from Weta, and we would review in sequences, which is really a unique way of working and something I will always do moving forward. You know, quite often in the world of visual effects, you sort of have hero shots and you review shots, but reviewing sequences means that you look at it as it's going to be watched in the film. You look at it as part of an edit. And it was just an amazing way to evaluate performance, but also it means that you don't get sort of myopic and just focusing on one little thing and playing it on loop over and over again, which isn't how people are going to watch it. So it meant the iterations in terms of creating the visual effects were greatly reduced.
And I've asked you this before, but what are you excited for audiences to take away from this film or experience in the future?
I mean, I just think there's a lot of unique experiences that people can take away from the film. And, you know, the lesson I learned from Showman is that whatever you think people are going to take away from the film, it's so often something else. And I think that's just because everyone comes to it with their own personal experience, and they project their own personal experience, particularly onto the monkey. I think it's the way into that narratively, the way in which you watch a monkey and what he's going through in terms of his mental health issues. I think that's something that people are really going to connect with. And it's not something that's often talked about in cinema. I think the relationships with his grandma and his father, I think all the interpersonal family relationships are something that everyone relates to. And so there's the external and the internal, you know, and those relationships, both with himself and with others. I think there's a lot for people to see themselves in. There's a lot for people to relate to. And there's a lot of, you know, quite dark moments that can be a conversation starter because it gets brought up in the film. It's wonderful that it allows people that avenue.